Welcome back to Council Candidates Live, Round 1. I'm Sandy Jacobson. This segment is one of 4, which gives a group of the candidates for City Council a chance to answer a wide range of questions asked on video by community leaders. The League of Women Voters of Santa Monica Education Fund has randomly divided candidates into small groups so they can both answer the questions and interact with their fellow candidates in a roundtable forum. Now let me introduce the candidates for segment 2 of Council Candidates Live, Round 1. We'll be talking with City Council candidates Nick Bowles, Whitney Scott Bain, Terrence Lader, and Pam O'Connor. First, we'll hear opening statements from each candidate, starting with Nick Bowles.
Thank you, Sandy. So my name is Nick Bowles, and I'm running for City Council. I believe that Santa Monica needs a change of pace in its elected leadership. Working as a nonprofit consultant, I've found that a fresh perspective on a familiar challenge creates viable solutions. And I want to work together across generations to plan effectively today for a better tomorrow. Now, I was recently endorsed by Assemblymember and 3-time Mayor Richard Bloom, and I believe that I have a lot to bring. Thank you.
Thank you. Whitney Scott Bain, please.
I'm Whitney Scott Bain, 44-year resident of Santa Monica, and really love this city. I've seen it change over the years, some for the good, some for the worse. And my love for this city is, it's all there. I really enjoy it. I've worked at Browse Wing and Helicopter at the airport. I've worked at the Aero Theater as a kid. I've worked at the Wilshire as a kid. And I will tell you, this city really has a rich community that we all have to work together and work with each other.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Whitney. Terrence Lader, please.
Hi, Terrence Lader here with VoteNowForLater.com. I'm a 3-generation Santa Monica local. I have been involved in many of the city activities as an activist. One of my latest is the landmarking of Chez J Restaurant. I'm for Prop D. I was in 2006 the only candidate that stood against.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, finish your sentence.
I was the only candidate that stood against Prop W to make sure the Oaks Initiative got mandated.
Thank you, Terrence. Pam O'Connor, please.
Hi, I'm Pam O'Connor. I'm running for re-election to the City Council because I'm committed to a sustainable future for Santa Monica. I've helped usher in Expo Light Rail, which will open in 2 years in 2016. I'm committed to our community, to protecting our neighborhoods, to jobs and housing for our workforce. I'm supported by the Community for Excellent Public Schools, for community leaders like Zev Yaroslavsky and our Assemblymember Richard Bloom, our police and firefighters. I hope you'll vote for me November 4th, Pam O'Connor.
Thank you, Pam. All right, we're going to go to our first question now, which is about term limits.
Hi, I'm Danilo Bach, Chair of the North of Montana Association. And my question is this. City commissioners serving full terms are now termed out after serving a maximum of 3 terms. Do you support a similar limit of 3 terms or 12 years for city council members too?
All right. Let me get to see who comes in first. Pam, you're going to answer this question first. So how do you feel about term limits?
Well, first of all, I did not support term limits for our boards and commissions. I think that, again, the council can make those decisions. Interestingly enough, today I was speaking with some mayors from elsewhere who said they have cities with term limits. People run for 8 years, are off 2 years, and then run again. So another reason I would say that term limits are not good. It would be harder for people to serve in a regional capacity, such as on the Exposition Light Rail Authority or Metro Board, which I serve on. If you're in a city that doesn't have, that you're out in 8 years, you won't be serving on those boards.
Thank you, Pam. Nick Bowles, what do you think?
Yeah, personally, I think that term limits are a good thing. However, there should be a decent amount of term limits. I would say maybe 4 terms, just because it does take some time to be able to properly learn how to govern and run a city. However, once you do that, it's also important to pay it forward and build a bridge to the next generation to take the reins of leadership and offer a new perspective.
Thank you. Whitney?
I also believe in term limits, but I also believe that we should change the charter so that the city can vote for a mayor rather than having the city council elect a mayor out of the 7 council members.
Okay, and Terrence?
Well, I think absolute power corrupts. I think it's very important that change of leadership is in the works. And if you like what has been going on in your city for the last 20 years, then maybe you should elect the same people again. However, I think that we should all be able to have a proper function in government of rotation and leadership.
So Pam, it feels like 3 against 1.
You know what's interesting? If you look at the composition of the city council right now, we have one person who will be leaving who's in their 6th term, one person in their 5th term, one person in their 4th term. You have 2 people who are pretty much in their 1st term because they did an unexpired term, and you have someone, I believe, in their 2nd term. So without term limits, we are able as a community to have that span so that you have some institutional memory on the council as well as you have folks coming in with the new ideas. I think that gives us a strong council always when you have that range of experience and folks in the midterm of their place on the council as well as the new folks. So you know, that span, that continuum really makes us a stronger city.
Terrence, there's a lot to be said for that memory, that long-term memory experience. Experience is a good thing.
Yes, as far as what I've seen go on in the city in my lifetime, or in just the last decade, I think it's as far as the gridlock and the density, the construction that's been going on a daily basis. We live on a construction site. Really, if you try to get around town, it's absolutely impossible without changing up streets or remembering where that they shut one street off and they're opened up another one. It's an incredible challenge for a lot of people.
Nick, do you feel pretty much the same? Do you feel that's the justification for term limits?
When I think term limits, I think that I really think that diversity of thought is first and foremost crucial to create a strong city that has constructive conversations. So I believe experience is necessary. However, I do think that it is absolutely pivotal and keystone for the progress of a city to continually introduce new perspectives and fresh ideas and new people who are passionate about things that may not be talked about with the current leadership.
And Whitney?
Well, the city council doesn't listen to the citizens. I mean, all you got to do is look at the bus stops, and they keep popping up like little mushrooms all over the place. The thing is, we want the old bus stops back. We want the benches, but they don't listen. So that's a problem there too. You've got to listen to your citizens. And this current city council and the past ones don't. And so we do need term limits, but we need people that are going to listen and obey the citizens.
So if all of you, if the 3 of you who want term limits, what would be the number you would, how many terms would you suggest?
I would go for 4.
Whitney?
4 would be nice.
Terrence?
I'd say 2 and out is 8 years is a great amount of time to get a lot accomplished.
And Pam?
I think the voters are smart in Santa Monica, and the voters will set the term limits.
Okay. Well, we've heard the candidates answer our first question about the subject of term limits for city council members. Now we'd like to hear from you. To participate, text your answer to 22333. Text the answer that you see in the parentheses on the screen. Or the easiest way to vote is to go to pollev, that's pollev.com/citytv. You'll see each poll when it's open and just click to send in your vote. So now tell us your answer to city commissioners serving full terms are now termed out after serving a maximum of 3 terms. Do you support a similar limit of 3 terms or 12 years for city council members too? Yes would be yes, SM. No would be no, SM. And don't know would be DK, SM, and don't care would be DCSSM. I don't know why you'd vote if you don't care, but for example, if you think a 12-year term limit for city council members is a good idea, text yes SM to 22333. We'll be back with the results before the end of this segment to see how your answers compare with the candidates. Now on to our next question, which has to do with divisiveness in our community.
I'm Carl Hansen, Director of Government Affairs for the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce. Recently, our local political discourse has become especially divisive. What will you do to bring our community back together?
Terrence, what would you do to bring our community back together?
Well, I think it's great that we have a chance now to put 3 new candidates into office and a fresh perspective. There's a number of candidates that are very slow growth, and myself would be relative to no growth. So I think that's would be a start to bringing the community back together. We need to be able to communicate with one another.
Thank you. Pam, how about you?
Well, I think Santa Monica is a place where people have a wide range of opinions and they express them. We follow a little bit the national trends right now. We're a little bit more politicized as a country and probably a little more politicized as a community. But frankly, I think we have that wide range of opinions and that we just need to make sure we are listening to each other. That doesn't mean we can always agree on everything because, again, a lot of Santa Monicans all over the spectrum. That makes for an exciting city.
Thank you, Pam. Whitney Scott Bain.
We need to have our families, the family unit, go out and meet other family units. When we were growing up as kids, everybody's mom knew everybody's mom. And the thing is, that whole community doesn't exist anymore. Everybody's afraid of their neighbor, or they don't want to know their neighbor. They don't want to know the cop who walks the beat down the street, and they should know. You know, we should have police coming over and saying, "Hey, how you doing? My name's Jeff. How's your family doing? What's going on?" Have them walk around and get
Thank
to
you.
know everybody.
Thank you, Whitney. And that would leave Nick.
Yeah, well, I think that, everybody deserves to be heard. And even though I may not agree with you on every issue, I'll always take the time to understand and listen to you. And even when I go out to, my local neighborhood council, we have a lot of different perspectives, but it doesn't mean that we don't take the time to sit down, hash it out, and listen to where everybody's coming from. So a big piece of creating these constructive conversations and keeping the civility of these conversations on the uptick is reaching out, sitting down, and having the tough discussions to get the best possible product.
Thank you, Nick. Well, it seems like without a common enemy, it's hard for Americans, let alone Santa Monicans, to get together these days. Short of a common enemy. But you've suggested some ideas. People are kind of wrapped up in their machines. Is that, do you think, part of the reason why we're not intermingling as much as we used to? Nick, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I think this is a problem that happens everywhere. It's everyone gets tucked into their silos and tries to do what's best for their specific organization or their specific interests and lose sight of the long-term vision. Now, we're all part of Santa Monica, we're all connected, we're all one people, so it's really important to look past those silos, break through those barriers, and work together united under a common vision. So, definitely.
Whitney, was it you who talked about moms knowing moms, or was that Terrence?
That was me.
Okay.
And that's when I was growing up. I mean, everybody knew everybody.
Yeah, but it's a little different now. I mean, there's people dropping their kids off at school and driving to work or stuff like that.
We've become an antisocial, I hate to say it, we've become very antisocial, and that's the problem. Nobody wants to know anybody anymore. And the kids are busy playing video games rather than doing their homework. I mean, listen, computers are great, don't get me wrong, but there's a time and place for everything. You got to go out there and play football or baseball, go over, and little girls have to play with their dolls, and kids have to read their comic books or play baseball or whatever kids do.
So, Pam, I'm going to skip over you for a second. Pam, you remarked that Americans seem less interactive, and less involved, more polarized. Do you think there's any hope?
Absolutely, and I think the kinds of things we need to look for are right here in our own region. I think of the Museum of Tolerance, and that's, I think, something that we need to consider and look into ourselves and be retrospective about that we need to make sure that each one of us becomes tolerant. That we're tolerant of other people's views. That if somebody is on the opposite side, you don't demonize them. You listen. You might still say, I disagree, but you're respectful about it. Again, that tolerance is what builds a strong society, and we as a nation in the United States are strong. We need to get away from the polarization. We need to be more tolerant.
So, Terrence, would you disagree with anything that's been said here?
Well, I think what was really important was the fact that there's been so much development. Historic landmarks have disappeared. Our nativity scene and the menorah in the parks has disappeared. I grew up in Santa Monica when not only just a church, but all churches and synagogues got together in the holiday season. We're coming up to that time right now, and everybody got together and worked, on a common communication and a common bond in the park. You know.
Hi, Rosa. Is it tantrum?
So the idea that somehow, that brought the community together. The current city council and the previous councils have not stood up for the people to keep our cultural, our Santa Monica cultures together.
You know, this is supposed to be a round table. You're not supposed to be waiting for questions from me. Do you have any interaction with each other? Anything to disagree with or agree with?
Sure, we could probably come up with something.
Pam.
This is a time where there's a lot of change going on. 1/3 of the population now are the millennials, people born between 1980 and the early 2000s. It's the biggest group, and they're changing the way we live. So those of us who've been here for a long time, yeah, things are changing fast, both on the technology scene, the way people are moving around, and that always gives us as humans a little bit of discomfort. So I think these are slightly turbulent times that we're making our way through.
Yeah, and
Terrence, are you a millennial? I mean, I don't mean Terrence.
I certainly feel like there you go, young at heart.
We pass as a millennial.
We think like millennials.
Right, okay, but I think we actually have a real millennial.
yeah,
Yes,
I
we do.
am. I am a millennial. I am right on the cusp of Generation Y and the millennial generation, and it's this. I'm really working to make sure that we engage this new generation into elected leadership positions, and we can offer that different perspective that we have, especially right here in Santa Monica, which has just been historically an incubator for innovation. And we see it with these entrepreneurs. Barack Obama was just here recently and spoke to the millennial generation about the very unique perspectives that we offer and how we can integrate technology and the new way that information is disseminated into local government. So I think it's a big, big opportunity for us.
Okay, good. Well, just to remind you, we're doing live audience polling tonight, and we're asking you to participate with your vote on the question you see on the screen. Text your answer to 22333. Send the answer that you see in the parentheses. Or go to pollev.com/citytv to vote online. For example, if you want to vote for no text, for no. If you want to vote for no, text no SM to 22333. Join in and email or text us now. Let's move on to our next question, which has to do with Santa Monica's current living wage, which is about $15.37 per hour. But that's really almost not enough for people to live on. So let me see who I want to answer that question. Let me start with you, Whitney Scott Bain, please.
Wow, 1537.
Hi, I'm Shantae Bernard
I'm
with
sorry, I
Connections
forgot
for
to-
Children. Santa Monica's current livable wage is $15.37 per hour, but not enough for the average person to afford childcare and housing in Santa Monica. What are your plans to make Santa Monica more affordable for families who spend most of their time working in a city where they can't afford to raise their family?
Now, Whitney.
That's a great question, because I've got to tell you, this city's just really gotten out of hand. You can't have an affordable house in this city. I've seen like singles go for $14.95. Affordable would be like $500 if you're working at a $15 an hour job. You could probably swing that. But for a single mother, a single father, you've got to raise kids, you've got to take them to school, you've got dental, medical, it's impossible. And the thing, you can't survive in this city on $15.
Thank you. Nick, how about you?
Yeah, this is a huge issue, and the cost of living in Santa Monica is skyrocketing. And it's funny, I was sitting down with Shantae not too long ago and talking to her about childcare costs, specifically for single mothers, and it can cost anywhere from around $2,000 a month for commercial childcare, and that's just unaffordable for a working mother. On top of that, we have the highest rental prices in the entire Los Angeles County. And we need to do something immediately to figure out different ways to alleviate costs, increase affordable housing units, and get people out of their automobiles.
Thank you. Pam, how about your opinion?
This is an issue that not only affects Santa Monica, but affects our region. It affects us a little more intensely because, as Nick noted, the high cost of housing. So the kinds of things we need to do is to pay a living wage to those folks who are working a fair day's work, and the city of Santa Monica does that. There are efforts region-wide to look for expanding a minimum wage. Then critical to that also, we're the least affordable area for housing in the region. I mean, in the country, the region is. So we need to increase our affordable housing stock, and that does mean building more housing, building units.
Thank you, Pam. Terrence.
Well, I think the city. I'm for affordable housing. I'm also against H and HH. It seems like whenever there becomes a need, the city doesn't believe that budgeting their finances are an important item. They believe that somehow they have to pinch the residents once again for another couple of bucks. This city is awash in millions of dollars. It needs to be reorganized and budgeted.
Thank you, Terrence. Answer a question for me and maybe some viewers. What's the difference between a livable wage and minimum wage? Does anybody know?
I can tell you, minimum wage is the bare minimum, and then a livable wage is slightly higher than that. So basically, minimum wage was targeted originally at high school kids who don't really need to survive off that wage. However, because of the way the economy has shifted so much to a service economy, a lot of actually working class people were living on that wages. So a living wage was an attempt to move those people who were barely able to survive and feed their families on minimum wages to become a different classification of wages where it wouldn't be a minimum, but it would be able to sustain a family.
Okay. So, yeah, Scott.
Well, I see things as just like it's just gotten out of hand, and you can't really live in this city on a minimum wage. I mean, this young man or young woman wants to start out, go to Santa Monica College, they want to start it on their own. They get a job at In-N-Out Burger, Taco Bell, whatever, movie theater. They can't survive off of that. They'd have to work 3 or 4 jobs just to pay the rent alone, and how are they going to go to school to learn anything? It's just too much.
So that means you're in favor of a livable wage?
A livable wage, yes, but I'm also against, I say no on H and HH. There are other avenues that we can do to work with, but the thing is we shouldn't bleed our people that live here by taxing them to death.
Pam, do you feel differently about HH?
Yes, I support H and HH. That would provide funding to leverage and to help build affordable housing. The money for affordable housing does not come from the city's general fund. It came from redevelopment. We need to find more ways to produce that funding so that we can create the housing. Leverages it. It provides it for those affordable housing providers and constructors. That is the way we will get it. Otherwise, we will continue to have a limited housing stock that gets more and more expensive. So producing these deed-restricted affordable units for people in low income, as well as producing workforce housing, we need to work at that.
Terrence, I know that you oppose H and HH. How do you respond to what Pam's concerns are?
Well, I think
Look at Pam.
I think that our city is awash in funds. We did kind of gooch it by spending $100 million for Tongva Park, and I think that's where Jerry Brown got a little upset. And when his guys with the monocles and briefcases came down to do the books, they took that money back to Sacramento for that and other reasons because of the situation our state is in. But I think that a livable wage is very important, but I also think having job programs for those that live in Santa Monica, that go to school in Santa Monica, and when we keep the money in our city to be able to raise these kids that their families have lived here. I think it would be a step forward in making their dream happen too. Well, I know we can get done a lot of affordable housing without coming after the residents, especially the seniors.
Okay. I hear a grumble, but I have to wrap you up. I hear a little sound there. All right. We are doing live polling tonight, and we're asking you to participate with your vote that you see on the screen. So text your answer to 222-22333. And this is still about the question about full terms, term limits for our city council, or go to text your answer and answer one of the questions in parentheses, or go to pollev.com/citytv to vote online. For example, if you want to vote for no, text no SM to 22333. Join in and email or text us now. Let's move on to our next question, which has to do with, it's not the livable wage, it has to do with Bergamot. Nick, do you want to take it from here?
I'm Lawrence Eubank, Chair of the Wilshire, Montana Neighborhood Coalition. Do you think the Bergamot redevelopment should include a parking garage and a hotel?
Okay, that was fast. So what do you think, a parking lot and a hotel for Bergamot?
Okay, perfect. Well, it depends what the entire plan looks like. Now, I personally am privy to moving away from the parking model and getting people to use alternative transportation and making sure that development there specifically provides an area where people can work, live, and recreate. So we definitely need to be able to focus on creating revenue streams from the Bergamot station, as well as preserving the cultural arts and diversity there. However, this is all funding to the Big Blue Bus line, so we have to think of that first and foremost.
All right, and I want to clarify, it's a parking garage, not a parking lot. Whitney, how would you respond to that?
You're out of your mind if you want to put that in there. We need to save our art community, and it's a very, very diverse art community, and those are great people. I talk with them all the time. They're wonderful. What I don't understand is when the agency was built, why didn't they build their own garage? You got to ask that question. If we lose our art community there by putting in a hotel, why do we need a hotel there? I mean, what do they have to see? They have a recycling plant. That's wonderful. They have the homeless shelter next door.
All right.
You know, we have a couple of gas stations they can visit.
Terrence, I think they're thinking more about Bergamot itself.
Right.
Whitney, Terrence, you're next.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that it's important that we have our gallery community decide what's good for the gallery community. The idea that we need another hotel, we ran off the Hines project only for it to be taken over by another construction conglomerate. The idea that our art community, Soho's gone, and Bergamot should be landmarked, much like I landmarked Chez J Restaurant.
Thank you, Terrence. Pam, how about your opinion?
Well, you have at Bergamot the mix of the existing galleries, which are private businesses that provide access to art for sale and access to art, but being able to evolve Bergamot into being an arts and cultural space for community arts also. So how can you combine that? How can you grow that kind of use? Getting back to whether there should be parking, what level of parking, it's right next to Expo Light Rail Station. There will always be some parking, but again, figuring out what that right mix is will be part of that process going forward.
So how would the four of you determine what's the right mix for an Expo line? If you want people to use that line, there has to be some parking there. I think the idea of a hotel there could be cool. What are you all opposed to parking and hotels, or just one or the other? Pam, you're nodding.
No, not opposed to that, and the council directed staff to establish a working group to move forward on getting community input in a process. It's very similar in some ways to the Civic Center working group that's going on, to the successful Annenberg Beach House that came through that kind of process. So they can figure out what is that mix of uses. We do know that the galleries will be one part of it. We know that cultural aspects that will support the community, arts will be another part of it. There's one possibility that UCLA and Peter Sellers and the Arts and Art kind of Institute could be there to promote arts in the community. And then how would that all be funded? Perhaps the hotel might energize that, might create that revenue stream. And then where would parking be? So there are a lot of pieces that need to come together. There's a developer that's moving forward that's been selected by the council as the likely developer. But again, they have a plan, but it's going to be shaped by the community through a process.
So, Terrence.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Santa Monica Civic, because since everybody was concerned about the Civic being saved, and I certainly am, and it being, that's my background is entertainment, I brought a rock solid plan to them to save the Civic. And very interested folks to be able to do that. The city said, no, not yet. And since it was closed last July, we've spent $1 million on consultants to go back and forth about what's up with the Santa Monica Civic.
All right, let's bring it back to the Bergamot, though.
Right. Well, we need our galleries here. That's the most important. Our art community in Santa Monica is getting smaller and smaller, and the most important thing is to keep our artists and our creative people here. The children need to be able to visit that. It's an educational facility. The children's arts, music, and after-school programs have always been threatened in this community.
So, Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that this is definitely an opportunity to expand our arts, our arts community, and really invest, as long as the development or whatever we build there really has the purpose of expanding and enhancing our culture, arts, and diversity, and creating a beacon for everyone around the world to really look and model after, then we'll be successful.
So with or without a hotel?
A hotel would provide really needed revenue to the area. Yes, I mean, if a nice boutique hotel, not something that's big and monstrous and ugly, but something that really complements and is built there for the purpose of artistic values.
Could you live with it, Whitney?
No, I don't think they should have a hotel or parking there. They should leave Bergamot alone, leave the artists alone, because it's a very cultural aware society.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Nick and Whitney and Terrence and Pam for joining us tonight. Did I say it wrong?
No, I reminded you.
Oh, I was getting there. Now let's let's see what the audience thinks, okay? You heard that the first question we were asked was about term limits for city council members. And apparently the voting went 29% yes in favor of term limits, 47% against it, and 24% didn't care. Go figure. All right, so we're going to take a short break to change out and bring in our next group of candidates. So stay tuned for our next segment, where we'll be talking to John Mann, Kevin McKeown, and Phil Brock. We'll be right back.